Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really groundbreaking, nanotechnology.
Yes.
Many of you flagged this as a key area, and you sent in just a fantastic range of sources.
Absolutely. I mean, everything from societal impact reports to deep dives on the economics, the science itself.
Exactly. It shows how pervasive this field is becoming, even now.
Yeah,
But it can feel a bit overwhelming, right?
definitely. There's a lot out there.
So that's our mission today. We want to cut through that noise, pull out the really crucial, the most fascinating insights for you.
Sort of distill it down.
Yeah, give you a clear, efficient understanding, your shortcut to being, really informed on this.
And it matters, too. This isn't some far-off niche thing anymore. Nanotech's potential is so broad, it's likely touching your world, or it will be soon.
Right, whether you're prepping for a meeting, trying to understand a new innovation space, or you're just, well, curious.
You'll likely have some aha moments, I think.
I hope so. And looking at the sources, wow. The scope is incredible. Revolutionizing medicine, materials, a huge economic shifts predicted.
Yeah, and the societal questions, too. It's interesting, some of these sources mention a workshop way back in 2000.
Yeah, I saw that. Researchers, social scientists, policymakers, already grappling with the implications back then.
It really sets the stage, shows this isn't just a sudden development.
Okay, so let's dive in. Fundamentally, what is nanotechnology? What are we actually talking about here?
Well, at its core, it's about working with matter on an incredibly small scale, the nanoscale.
Which is?
Roughly between 1 and 100 nanometers. A nanometer is, get this, a billionth of a meter.
Wow. Okay, so incredibly tiny,
Uh,
almost unimaginably small.
exactly. And the key thing is, at that scale, the basic properties of materials, their strength, conductivity, color, you name it, they aren't fixed. They can be engineered.
Engineered, you mean changed intentionally.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That ability to design and control matter at that fundamental level, that's where the power lies.
Okay, designing materials atom by atom, almost. How do scientists actually do that? Tiny tools,
Well, there are basically two main approaches. One is called top-down.
top down.
Yeah, think of it like sculpting. You take a bigger piece of material and you carve or etch it down to create nanoscale features.
Okay, like microchip manufacturing, maybe?
Sort of, yeah, that's a classic example. The other way is bottom up.
Which sounds like the opposite.
It is. You start with the building blocks, individual atoms and molecules, and you assemble them piece by piece into larger structures, like building with atomic Legos, if you will.
Got it. Shrinking down or building up.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some really wild structures and phenomena being discovered.
Oh, yeah. The variety is amazing. Things like carbon nanotubes, incredibly strong, way stronger than steel, but super light.
I've heard of those.
Then you have molecular motors, tiny machines, often biologically inspired, that perform tasks.
Like little robots.
Kind of.
Hmm.
And scientists are even using DNA, the stuff of life, as a scaffold to build complex nanoassemblies.
Using DNA as a building material.
And quantum dots, tiny semiconductor crystals whose electronic and optical properties change just based on their size. Really useful.
So size is everything at the nanoscale.
It really is. We also see new phenomena like giant magnetoresistance GMR. That's what enabled the massive increase in hard drive capacity.
So that's already in our devices.
Absolutely. And things like size confinement, where
Right.
just shrinking a material changes how it interacts with light or electricity. It's a whole new world of physics and chemistry opening up.
Molecular motors. DNA construction. It really does sound like science fiction becoming reality. And you're saying this has the potential to, fundamentally change society.
Without a doubt. And that's something the reports really stress. The National Nanotechnology Initiative, the NNI, they recognized this early on.
The NNI.
Yeah, the U.S. initiative, they specifically funded research not just on the science, but also on the ethical, legal, and social implications, the ELSI stuff.
Smart. So thinking ahead.
Exactly. They understood public engagement and understanding are crucial if this tech is going to be adopted successfully.
Makes sense. You can't just spring something this big on people. You mentioned a specific example about sustainability, something about lighting.
Yes, this one's pretty compelling. Projections suggest that within, say, 10-15 years, advances in nanotech-based lighting, think super efficient LEDs, or maybe something entirely new, could cut global energy consumption by over 10%.
10% globally. Just from lighting.
Just from lighting improvements, yeah. That's enormous. Huge savings, massive reduction in carbon emissions. It gives you a real sense of the potential scale.
Wow. Okay, that's a concrete example. But you also flagged that while some things are commercial now, There's still a lot of basic science we don't fully understand yet.
That's a really important caveat. Yes, you see nanotech in hard drives, like we said,
Hmm.
or in some pharmaceutical products for better drug delivery.
Where even small gains are valuable.
Right. But the field is still, relatively speaking, young. We can make these amazing structures, but truly designing complex systems from the ground up at this scale, that needs a much deeper understanding of how matter behaves in that sort of intermediate nanoscale realm.
So we know atoms, we know bulk materials, but the in-between is still being explored.
Exactly. That's where many of the biggest scientific challenges and the biggest opportunities lie.
Okay, early days, immense potential. Let's dig into some applications. Space exploration always grabs the imagination. How does nanotech fit in there?
But think about the biggest hurdle in space. Launch costs. Every gram counts.
Right, it's incredibly expensive to lift things into orbit.
Nanotechnology offers ways to make things dramatically smaller, lighter, and less power hungry. Payloads, instruments, even the spacecraft structure itself.
Lighter materials.
Exactly. Imagine materials that are incredibly strong, like those nanotubes, but weigh next to nothing. And materials stable across huge temperature swings. That could revolutionize spacecraft design.
So lighter ships, more efficient systems,
Yeah.
maybe enabling longer missions or more complex ones.
Absolutely. And here's another twist. The space environment itself, the microgravity, the vacuum, might actually be a unique place to manufacture certain nanostructures that are difficult to make down here.
Manufacturing in space.
Yeah.
Using nanotech.
Ah,
That's wild.
it's an intriguing possibility for the future, definitely.
Okay, back down to Earth. What about national security? How's nanotechnology relevant there?
Well, this is where a foundational technology like nano really intersects with defense capabilities. The applications are pretty wide-ranging.
Gotcha.
You're looking at advanced nanoelectronics for information dominance, faster processing, better sensors, also more realistic virtual reality for training.
Better simulations.
Right, enhanced robotics and automation for dangerous tasks, lighter, stronger materials for vehicles, and body armor. That theme keeps coming up.
Lighter and stronger is always good for the military.
And improved sensors for detecting threats, chemical, biological, nuclear, even advancements in battlefield medicine and casualty care, plus things like monitoring nuclear nonproliferation.
It seems like it could touch almost every aspect of defense technology.
Ah.
Let's shift gears to sustainability. We mentioned energy, but what else?
Yeah, the potential here is really exciting for a more sustainable future. Think agriculture nanotech could lead to better crop yields, maybe with less need for fertilizers or pesticides,
More of a fin farming?
and water. Cheaper, more effective water filtration and desalination. That's huge for global water security.
Critical, absolutely.
We talked about solar energy conversion, but it also could mean reducing our reliance on scarce or environmentally harmful materials and developing cleaner industrial processes that just produce less pollution overall.
Doing more with less, essentially.
Exactly. It's about resource efficiency and minimizing our footprint.
Okay, clean water, sustainable food, less pollution. Powerful tools. Now, the economy. This is where those, frankly, staggering numbers come in. Trillions of dollars.
Okay, yeah, hold on to your hat here. The sources suggest nanotech isn't just another industry. It could be a dominant driver of economic growth, maybe the driver for decades.
Dominant.
Bill Joy, co-founder of Sun Microsystems, he's quoted, estimating that this convergence of digital and physical via nano could create something like $1,000 trillion in new wealth this century.
1,000 trillion. That number barely registers. How?
Well, the key seems to be the potential for really radical breakthroughs in manufacturing. Automated self-assembly at the nanoscale, for instance.
Self-assembly. Things building themselves.
Sort of, yeah. Imagine if you could drastically cut the cost of making almost everything. The reports give hypotheticals like halving the cost of making computers or cutting drug development costs by 70%.
If you can do that.
Right. The ripple effects on lifestyles, jobs, the entire global economy. They'd be profound. It could reshape supply chains, business models, everything.
But changes that big.
Yeah, take time, right?
And is society even ready for that kind of disruption?
That's the million-dollar or maybe trillion-dollar question. The reports draw parallels to the internet and e-business, which already caused huge shifts.
Yeah, lots of disruption there.
So will nanotech lead to a smoother transition or more significant dislocation? It really highlights the need for planning, for investment in education and adaptation. Just unleashing this could be chaotic.
So it's about managing the transition, not just inventing the tech. And the reports Stress investing in R&D and education to actually capture these benefits. What if we don't?
The downside scenarios are pretty sobering. If a country or region falls behind, doesn't invest, doesn't train its workforce, you risk losing competitiveness in key industries.
Losing jobs.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And maybe a brain drain talent going elsewhere, lack of investment capital, poor industry-government collaboration. The long-term result could be becoming a follower, not a leader, in the global economy. That's hard to recover from.
A stark warning.
Yeah.
Okay, moving beyond science and economics, the ethical, legal, social stuff, ELSI, this seems crucial.
Absolutely crucial. The workshop back in 2000 really focused here, recognizing it's way more than just gadgets.
So what are the main concerns?
Well, identifying and trying to head off potential undesirable consequences, not just focusing on the good stuff, and crucially involving the public.
Public participation.
Yes, and continuous monitoring of the societal impacts, both opportunities and challenges. It can't just be scientists and companies deciding everything.
Like trying to build the societal rules alongside the tech, not playing catch-up later.
Exactly. And needing open, multidisciplinary talks to clarify whose interests are being served.
Okay, let's loop back to the science and engineering a bit more. You said it's an emerging engineering discipline. What's the main goal?
The reports frame it as understanding and then harnessing natural processes of pattern formation for manufacturing.
Harnessing nature's way of building things.
Kind of. The ultimate long-term goal is being able to design and control the structure of stuff all the way from atoms up to macroscopic objects.
Total control over structure.
And doing it cheaply, efficiently, creating objects packed with information, processing it super efficiently. Basically hitting the physical limits of what's possible.
Hugely ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
What limits are we hitting now that nanotech aims to break through?
Well, our current champions, silicon chips and magnetic storage, they're likely hitting fundamental physical walls in the next, say, 10, 15 years at the current pace.
Moore's law slowing down.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless we find totally new ways to make switches and store data, that engine of progress could sputter. And that's where nano comes in.
With new devices?
Right. Components based on carbon nanotubes, quantum dots, maybe even single molecules as switches, and potentially entirely new manufacturing methods, maybe bio-inspired, to keep that cost per function curve dropping.
So nanotech might be the key to keeping that digital revolution going.
It could be. And think beyond desktops, shrinking computers further, maybe leading to wired humans with wearable tech seamlessly integrated.
Wearable computing.
Yeah, but that really relies on the ultra-low power consumption that nanoelectronics could potentially offer.
Wired humans. Sounds futuristic again. You also mentioned biology as a big inspiration.
Oh, hugely. Nature is the ultimate nanotechnologist, right? The living cell is packed with incredible nanomachines.
Like enzymes and ribosomes.
Exactly. Enzymes catalyzing reactions, ribosomes building proteins. These things work with staggering precision and efficiency. They're proof that molecular machines can do incredibly complex things.
So we're learning from nature's designs.
Absolutely. Studying how biology does it gives us invaluable clues for building our own artificial nanoscale systems. It's a massive source of ideas.
It makes sense. To make this happen, though, collaboration seems key, right, across different fields.
Totally essential. Nanotech is inherently interdisciplinary. You need biologists, chemists, physicists, engineers, material scientists, medics, mathematicians, all talking to each other.
Breaking down silos.
Yes, and collaboration between universities, government labs, industry, plus shared access to the really expensive, specialized tools and facilities needed for research.
It's a team sport, basically. Are we already seeing some nanomaterials in use?
We are. Things like gold nanoparticles or cadmium selenide quantum dots are used in research labs as labels for imaging.
Okay, specialized uses.
Yeah. The reports also mention the potential for synthetic nanostructures to show quantum effects at room temperature. That could be huge for quantum computing or new materials. And self-assembly.
Where things build themselves again.
Right. Getting nanoscale parts to spontaneously organize into functional structures, that's seen as vital for making complex systems affordably and at scale.
Sounds like a manufacturing breakthrough waiting to happen. What about the tools needed to actually see and work at this scale?
That's another area where nanoscience is driving innovation. Scanning probe microscopes, the things that let us feel or image individual atoms, they're moving from pure research into industry now.
Better quality control.
Exactly. And those fluorescent quantum dots, they're being explored for super-sensitive medical diagnostics. Even nanotubes are being used to make better microscope probes.
So the science enables new tools, which enables more science. A feedback loop.
Precisely. And looking ahead, the potential computing power. It's almost mind-bending.
What kind of power are we talking?
Levels that could let us tackle problems currently out of reach. Real-time language translation for everyone, much better climate models, analyzing massive genomic data sets.
Truly transformative computing.
And the reports even mention the ultimate limit, single-molecule electronics, using individual molecules as circuit components.
Molecules as transistors.
Okay.
Wow. The report also touched on small businesses and venture capital.
Yeah. It raises the question, will nanotech follow biotech with lots of nimble startups funded by VCs? Or will it be more like microelectronics, dominated by big, established players?
Too early to tell.
Probably. The reports suggest public investment needs to support both pathways, both startups and larger companies. Keep the ecosystem diverse.
Makes sense. And finally, underpinning all this science, mathematics.
Absolutely critical. Applied math, theoretical math, statistics, computer science.
Yeah.
They provide the essential language and tools for modeling what's happening, understanding the theory, running complex simulations of nanoscale behavior, predicting how atoms and molecules will behave when you put them together in new ways.
So math lets us design and predict outcomes.
Exactly. Things like Fourier analysis, soliton theory. These mathematical frameworks help us understand phenomena across different scales and disciplines. Math is what lets us bridge the gap from single atoms to bulk materials.
Okay, it's the language that connects it all. Let's pivot back to people.
Yeah.
The workforce and education needed for all this. That seems like a big challenge.
It really is. The reports emphasize needing people with broad backgrounds drawing from lots of different sciences and engineering fields.
Which is tough for traditional university departments, right? They tend to be siloed.
Very much so. Universities need to adapt, foster more interdisciplinary programs, more cross-pollination between departments. It's a cultural shift, really.
And with tech changing so fast, does specializing even make sense long term?
That's a great point the reports make. Breakthroughs happen so quickly that specific technical skills might become obsolete in just a few years.
So what's valuable then?
Foundational abilities, maybe? Critical thinking, adaptability, communication, the ability to learn continuously. Less about knowing one specific thing, more about being able to pick up the next thing.
Educating for lifelong learning, essentially, and getting access to the right equipment for training. That sounds expensive.
Hugely important and hugely expensive. Getting hands-on time with state-of-the-art nanofab facilities is crucial for training. Ensuring broad access is a real challenge.
So programs like the NNI Fellowship for Multidisciplinary Study are good, but the underlying university structure needs to evolve too.
Exactly. Infrastructure and culture both need to
Adapt. Okay, let's quickly revisit space and security, maybe looking a bit further out now. You mentioned a new paradigm for space systems.
Yeah, thinking longer term, nanotech could enable spacecraft that are almost biological in their capabilities.
Biological.
Things like autonomy, self-repair, adapting to changing conditions, extreme energy efficiency, like living organisms. Imagine sensors sensitive enough to detect single photons or DNA-based data storage holding 1,000,000,000,000 times more info.
DNA for data storage.
Or maybe brain-inspired computing architectures using tiny amounts of power. The convergence of nano, bio, and infotech, that's where really revolutionary things could happen for space.
Spacecraft that think, heal, adapt. And you said these space advances often spin off back to Earth.
Historically, yes. The tough demands of space drive innovation. Think satellites, medical monitors, new materials. Nanotech advancements for space will likely follow that pattern, yielding benefits down here.
So reaching for the stars helps us here at home. Shifting back to national security, it's about economic and military strength, right?
Yes, the reports view nanotech as vital for both, and they acknowledge the fierce international competition already happening.
Everyone wants the edge.
Pretty much. For defense, beyond the things we mentioned, it's about advanced materials, sensing, IT, better medical care, maintaining that technological advantage.
But what about those more sci-fi fears? The self-replicating nanobots, the gray goo scenario.
Ah, yes. The reports tackle this directly. They acknowledge these visionary fears exist, often fueled by fiction, but stress that many lack a solid scientific basis right now.
So it's mostly speculation.
Based on current understanding, yes. They distinguish between realistic near-term applications and these extreme extrapolations. It's also pointed out that anything truly self-replicating derived from genetic modification would likely fall under existing biotech regulations.
So not unregulated gray goo.
Probably not. The reports advocate for responsible discussion and maybe controls if experiments reach certain concerning stages, but caution against letting unfounded fears stifle potentially beneficial research.
A balanced perspective, then.
Right.
Differentiate science from fiction. Okay, let's talk life cycle and sustainability again. Doing more with less.
Exactly. Nanotech promises to boost environmental quality by letting us achieve goals using way less energy and fewer raw materials. It fits that historical tech trend, think early computers versus modern ones.
Dematerialization.
Right. Nanotech could potentially cut energy and material use by orders of magnitude for certain tasks. But
There's always a but.
we have to see it in the bigger picture. Population growth, overall resource consumption. Tech helps, but it's part of a larger system.
So nanotech is a powerful tool, but not a magic bullet for sustainability on its own.
Precisely. The reports show where it could make big impacts: electricity generation, materials production, transport,
Yeah.
but it needs to be part of a broader strategy.
The reports also talked about how risks from technology have changed over time.
Yeah, this was insightful. A shift from acute risks, like immediate disasters, to more chronic, long-term ones.
Like nuclear waste.
That's a prime example. Or how medical advances improve health, but often raise long-term healthcare costs because people live longer and need more care. Or even the hidden labor costs of complex software.
Less obvious, creeping challenges, and the risk of losing old skills.
That's another subtle one. Becoming over-reliant on high tech might mean losing fundamental skills, like the doctor who forgets how to use a stethoscope well because they always rely on imaging.
So we need backups. Basic skills remain important.
Maintaining a balance seems wise for resilience.
Okay, as we wrap up, the reports call for rethinking our whole relationship with technology. What does that involve?
It's a big ask. Developing a broader cost-benefit analysis that includes ethics, social responsibility, not just economics.
A more holistic view.
Yes, guided by human purposes and benefits, not just what's technically possible. Creating a cultural ecology of technology, studying how tech and society actually interact and co-evolve.
Cultural ecology, I like that. It suggests it's complex, adaptive.
And it forces us to ask tough questions, like how does the promise of super durable nanoproducts fit with an economy based on consumption and replacement?
Yeah, good question. A built-to-last world versus planned obsolescence.
Exactly. Or why don't we always use existing safer or more sustainable options? The cultural ecology helps examine those trade-offs.
So looking beyond the tech specs to the real-world context and using envisionment.
Right. Actively exploring multiple plausible future scenarios, not just utopia or dystopia. Learning from past tech introductions, like the car or GMOs, which had complex unintended effects.
Thinking through the possibilities more carefully.
And using visuals, making the science accessible, getting more people engaged in shaping the future.
Okay, this has been incredibly rich. If you had to boil it down, what's the single biggest takeaway about nanotechnology?
I'd say it's the sheer breadth of its transformative potential, revolutionizing materials, electronics, medicine, energy, potentially reshaping our world at a very fundamental level. It's not just one thing, it's foundational.
A fundamental shift. And as we stand here looking forward, what's the key question, the food for thought you'd leave our listener with?
Maybe it's about balancing this immense power with societal readiness. How do we wield the ability to manipulate matter at the atomic level responsibly? What are our ethical obligations?
Good questions.
And crucially, how do we ensure the benefits are shared widely, equitably, while managing the risks proactively? It really calls for ongoing critical engagement from all of us.
Powerful thoughts indeed. It's clear we've only scratched the surface here. If specific areas sparked your interest, definitely use those sources you shared to dig deeper. Thank you for providing such great material, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive into nanotechnology.